First of all, I never usually stayed out past midnight or even 10, but I was feeling myself that night. Something was ending and it was time to celebrate. My friend Emery had reserved the back room of a Center City lounge so we could spin some records for the first and final time before I packed up the rented carriage house and U-hauled out of town. 1 year in Philly had sprawled into 2, and I'd been digging weekly that whole time at this spot called Beautiful World and another called Milk Crate, plus Mark's Spot, which didn't have a name. And then there was another out past Bryn Mawr that I found by accident, a place the local DJs had long written off as trash, except I happened to fall through just as a new collection came up from the basement, had not even been filed yet. All Holy Grail joints, the Del Jones record, a mint original Headless Heroes of the Apocalypse LP, the Bo Diddley with the break, the Retta Hughes, the Johnny Houston, some 40 pieces and nothing stickered past $8. It's bound to happen if you dig long and doggedly enough, but only about once per decade. My last 2 had been Waterville, Maine in '96 and the Jamaican lady I met outside Academy Records in Manhattan double parked on 12th Street, truck sagging with roots reggae. There were 2 guys working that day, a bald-headed white boy and a dread, and the wrong one jogged out. He took a quick flip through and passed. I slid up and asked if I could look, ended up jumping in the shotgun seat and driving back up to the Bronx to see what she had left at home. That was 2002 or possibly '03. And now it was May 28, 2011. I'd amassed 2 crates, one for each year of my expiring university appointment, and barely listened to a lot of it myself. All I had at the house was a portable turntable Emery had let me hold, and all my 3-year-old wanted to hear was the Dixie Cups crooning about their trip to the Chapel of Love. Maybe because her mother and I were not married ourselves. I had not spun out since leaving California, and music always sounds different when you were rocking for a room, studying the way each song hits. DJing is the art of making people hear what you do. Each record transforms the crowd, and each crowd the record. I invited my grad students, and most of them came. It was a small MFA program, tight-knit, with little of the pettiness or gamesmanship I recalled from my own. After workshop, we often went for drinks. A motorcade of hatchbacks and tin cans cruising 4 blocks to the tavern near campus because walking even that far was considered foolhardy in Camden at night. 1 bar for an entire university was one too few. Meant I risked seeing my undergrads drunk, but it was no worse than running into them while I was lifting weights at the school gym, and for the most part we were all adept at not getting in each other's way, like housemates sharing a kitchen. Somebody took a flick of me behind the wheels that night, probably Leslie. My left hand is pressed to the wax, fingertips back cueing the funky little drum fill at the top of hit or miss. Right hand, a jutting peace sign, elbow cocked, arms tan, Emery grinning beside me. That was one of the last records I played, which means it was about 12:30 and might even be after the first call from my father, the one I ignored, straight cognitive dissonance. There was no earthly reason he would call that late, and I was in the middle of my set. No one was sick or frail. My last living grandparent was already dead. I told myself he must have dialed by mistake in his car, homebound from the newspaper after writing the first headline the greater Boston area would see tomorrow when they freed the globe from its plastic sheath, tipped their coffee mugs mouthward, destroyed the symmetry of their donuts. But 5 minutes later he called again, and this time I picked up, cupping a palm over my open ear to blunt the funk booming behind. I still didn't think anything was wrong. In fact, I remember or think I remember being slightly annoyed, in the belief that this call was a frivolous intrusion, which makes so little sense that perhaps I knew better and was frightened enough to erect this cardboard buttress. My father said, "I've put this off as long as possible." That's not what he said. I mean me. I would live here in this preamble forever, rework it, fold in new ingredients, knead it till the gluten breaks, yammer on about records, tell some jokes, Have I mentioned that on this night and for the 6 weeks beforehand, a book I had written that did not yet technically exist, could not be held in hands till June, was somehow outselling every other book in the world? There was almost certainly a split second when I convinced myself my father was calling about that, jubilant with some new tidbit that had dropped into his newsroom off the AP wire. Additional victims claimed by this viral sensation of mine. We could talk about the book. I could tell you a few stories about stories, flip a little wordplay. We could warm up with some improv games. It has been 8 fucking years and I have written everything but this. My father said, David has taken his own life. And I answered as if I didn't understand or hadn't heard. My reply was, what? And he repeated it. There is plenty to regret, and perhaps this is insignificant, but I wish I had not made him say it to me twice. The second time I was in motion, walking through the back room, the front room, out into the heat wave night. I wasn't crying yet, but I also couldn't speak or think. My father's sentence was unrecognizable, a cluster of words spinning in a void. The notion that it was all a mistake flashed through me and fell instantly to ash. No parent would say such a thing about his child, to his child, if there was any hope. And here begins a different kind of struggle, on this page. Akin to keeping the steering wheel perfectly straight, a struggle not to crane out of this shot, not to add voiceover, not to do the one thing I am trained to, which is make things legible, impose structure and plot, motivation, a frame, a double helix of narrative to snake through the spine, to be the spine. Here I am, here we are, not 50 feet from the news of my brother's suicide, and already I can feel a tug at the reins. I don't know if naming these things can sap their power, or if it constitutes a sacrifice at their altar, an invitation to the impulse I am trying to disperse. What are the rules of this endeavor? Am I supposed to unfold the moments of this night like an origami crane, crease by crease? Is that the penance or the healing, the ritual, a march toward or away from what? Penance for what? If you are making up the ritual as you go, is it a ritual? If the loss is a hole that cannot be filled, is the remainder of your life the ritual? Are rituals supposed to fill the hole or deepen it until you can crawl out the other side? And who am I that I have to ask? My mother's father's parents were the children of famed rabbis. They came here and founded a Jewish community in Burlington, Vermont by paying other Jews to keep the Sabbath, making them whole and a minion by handing out the wages they would have lost in observing the holy day. And here I am, not even 150 years later, acting as if the books my people carried and died for are unknown to me. Here I am, freighted by nothing, reinventing the wheel, reinventing the rack, daring to believe that perhaps you only realize a ritual was one after you complete it. Inscribe the final character. A tear falls on the page, becomes the final period, or some stupid maudlin shit like that.